Hi, this is Caleb Owens with the Insurance Experience. Today I'm with Rob McGaver. Hi, Rob. How are you today?
Hey, Caleb, I'm great. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm really good. I'm really excited to talk to you today. I've got a little bit of chance to talk with you the other day, and I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I heard a little bit about your background. You seem more what I would call just like a regular guy, just somebody that just came up the normal route. I wouldn't really expect someone that's made it up to your level just started out just like anybody else. So I'm really, I can't wait to get into that. If you don't mind starting it off, just tell me about yourself and how you got started and where you came from.
Absolutely. Like you said, Rob McGaver. I work for West Bend, which is an insurance company about 40 minutes outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Born and raised in Milwaukee. And how I got started after I graduated college, I actually went into law enforcement right out of school.
Wow.
I joined up with a local sheriff's office and I was a
Wow.
deputy there. And my first assignment was in the jail. And
Okay.
I had a great time working for the sheriff's office, wonderful people, but jail's a tough place to be, no matter what side of the bars you're on, right?
Sure.
I started looking for other law enforcement positions. And at the time, one of my friends who was working as an underwriter in insurance said, "Hey, I think you'd be great in a claims role for our
Wow.
company. Why don't you give it a try?" And so I applied. I got the job and I thought, I'll do this while I'm still looking for something else in law enforcement.
Sure.
But once I got going and learning and just again getting to experience everything that claims has to offer, I've been with it ever since. So that brings me here
Wow.
today.
Wow. That's quite a story. It's from, what is it, Slumdog Millionaire? I wouldn't necessarily say you're a slumdog by any means. That's what I mean. Like you're a regular guy. You're working as a jailer and then you came up, you got a recommendation from your friend and you worked your way up. That's really cool. I really like to hear that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's just one of those things. It seems fairly common in insurance
Mm.
claims where people you fall into it,
Yeah.
stumble
Yeah.
across a job opening, and then it turns out to be a career, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's the talk. I always make that joke. Is kind of like you're saying, like out of college or high school, there are no recruiters from the insurance industry. There's nobody coming around saying, "Hey, you should really join up in this insurance industry." No, nobody ever does that. Nobody ever talks to anybody. It's just like you said. It's people falling into the industry. It's my primary thing. I was hoping to do didn't work out so well, so now I'll shift over here and try this out, give this a shot for a little while, and a lot of people it really works out really well for.
You're absolutely correct, Caleb. And it's funny because when I talk to a lot of folks now, again, trying to introduce them to the insurance industry or claims specifically, when you approach somebody, it's, I think you ever thought about insurance, and a lot of them, their minds go to, I don't want to sell anything. And it's like, no, our company we have accounting, finance, underwriting, loss control, our safety group. We have nurses on staff. We have HR. We have IT.
Right.
Insurance isn't just this little conglomerate of sales folks, which again, we have a great sales department too. Don't get me wrong, but
Right.
there's so much more that insurance has to offer, right? And it's just educating folks, really.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. Yeah. Just your statement about them thinking that it's just sales or they just, I think a lot of people just have a really limited understanding of what all insurance encompasses because there's so many different things. There's so many facets and things that I've learned new about like myself would be like complex claims and just so many different aspects to the insurance industry. That was my whole point with starting this podcast, just like highlighting these everyday people. I really wanted, I shouldn't say the no name people, but like the people that are actually just like you mentioned, there's all these other jobs and roles in the industry that nobody knows about, that nobody knows what they do. I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to try. It's a role in the insurance industry. You guys probably have them on staff where they do research and they find out if that type of policy is worth taking on. It's called it's a long name, but they're actually, if anything, they're more like a scientist, if you will, and they work in the insurance industry. I've been trying to get these people on my podcast, but they are typically hard to get. They just
Sure.
don't want to come on and actually talk on the camera. Probably their nature and what they're doing. They're really interesting people, from what I understand, as in what they're doing. They actually calculate the risk and find out, hey, is this really Do we want to take on 100,000 policies in California or something to that effect? So they're actually doing all these calculations. So there's so many different people in the industry that make it up. It's kind of like you just said, there's just dozens and if not hundreds of different positions. So, but tell me more about you. Okay, so you went from jailer to director. Can you walk me through in any more details about how you worked your way up from there?
Sure, absolutely. I've spent my entire career in workers' compensation. So,
Okay.
again, my first job after the sheriff's office was as a claims representative for workers' comp. And then I worked for a couple different companies, doing some moves, trying to get back home closer to my hometown. When eventually, again, I landed with West Bend. And when I started with West Bend, it was to help grow our large work comp risk team, if you will. So I was a claims rep there, worked my way up to manager, and then eventually became a director back in January of 2020. And the reason I remember that so easily is because we all know what happened in March of
Of
2020, right?
course. Yeah,
That was certainly being thrown into the fire there.
I
So
bet.
trying to figure out how we have this great in-office culture and just trying to get a grip on all my new job duties and everything like that. And then COVID hits and
Yeah,
we're all remote all of a sudden. And so that threw everybody for a loop.
right.
But yeah, it's been, again, I can't say enough good things about West Bend, about the other companies I used to work for, and just coming up in claims. It's been a great ride. I've met some wonderful people, and insurance. I'm sure a lot of people say this about their industry, but it really is it's a small, close knit industry, right? I still come across people today that I used to work with, whether directly as a coworker or vendor or whatnot, 15, 16, 17 years ago, and our paths still
Wow.
cross. It's been great.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I've got a couple different questions here. I don't know which one is going to start or be the second, but I'll start with one. And I think we talked about this a little bit last time, and you alluded into this. Is whenever you're hiring people, because you're in charge of all that as well, and you're trying to bring in new people into the industry. What's your experience now with working with the younger generation, the Gen Z, if I'm not correct? Is there any kind of, I would say, difficulties with trying to bring them on board into the industry?
Sure. Great question. And we talked about it a little bit. I think the
Mhm.
first piece, again, like we already said, was education, just showing them all that insurance has to offer. We do have an intern program here, which has been great. And I think the key there, though, is really giving your interns as much of an experience as possible, not only exposing them to maybe what your group does, but what about some of the other groups that you work with? What do they do? Trying to not only see if they're a good fit for your group, but if insurance is a good fit for them. We've been very fortunate to hire a lot of our interns on full time after their internship's over. And some we haven't, but that's okay because there's been a handful of them that realize, you know what? Hey, that was a great internship. I learned a lot, but this just isn't for me. And that's okay. That's our goal.
Right.
That's what we're trying to do is give them as much exposure as possible to the insurance industry, to claims, and make sure it is a good fit for them, right? It's the whole point of our program. It's been really beneficial. I've gotten to learn a lot about, again, not only the recruitment side of things, what impressions do these college students have of insurance, and trying
Yeah.
to, again, just help them make sense of everything insurance has to offer and make sure it's a good fit for them.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The second one I was going to go into, and I'll parlay this with another question, which is like, how did that affect everything? You mentioned that with COVID, and you just stepped right into your position. That was a real difficult thing for anyone. You just stepped into this position, and then all of a sudden, it's just like, all right, everybody's going home, everybody's going remote. I can imagine that was really difficult time to adjust, at least.
It was absolutely, it was a little bit chaotic at first, as I'm sure a
Yeah,
lot of people experienced, but our company, our big focus was don't look at COVID as an obstacle, but as an opportunity. So, what can we
hmm.
get out of this experience to make ourselves better? I
Wow.
know one thing in particular, we have in office staff, we have some remote staff. We do business all over the US. And the struggle always seemed to be making remote associates feel connected, right? Making them, how do you extend that in-office culture out to your remote folks? And it's something, at least I always felt like I struggled with a little bit, right? Then when COVID hit, we're all remote, we're all virtual and whatnot. And so it helped me realize that we can keep that connection, right? We can do better. I had to try harder, right? I had to be more creative to try and keep that connection. We were talking about this a little bit before off air, but I co-host a podcast here at West Bend called, you can kind of see the sign back there, The Claim Story. And that was born out of COVID. And what it is, we interview all kinds of folks in our claims department, but we talk to them about all sorts of things, not work related. The whole point was to get to know our fellow associates beyond work, beyond the claims, right? And just hearing some of the most interesting stories, some people doing some amazing things that maybe you would have never known unless they came on our podcast and shared that. And again, it was a way for us to stay connected with our associates and introduce them to people in the claims department at a time where we couldn't physically be together. So that started out of COVID and it's still going. And again, it's been fantastic. Just last week, we interviewed a gentleman who we talked about falling into insurance or whatnot. He was a professional mixed martial artist doing different cage fighting events and whatnot, and then personal training as well. And then he had a family member who worked in insurance and was like, yeah, maybe that's something I should try. And sure enough, now he's a claims rep for us. And it's just learning these stories and learning some of the backstory of some of these folks. It's just been fascinating. So,
yeah, it definitely goes against the stereotype. People that work in insurance, which is kind of like this really boring people that are just bean counters working behind a desk. And it's, wow, you got an MA guy there. You pulled them from all over. And that's really the makeup, right? You get people of all different kinds of walks of life that go into insurance. And that's really interesting. I really applaud you for doing that podcast. So you do that, just if I understand it correctly, because you've got people that are remote that will never be in the office. And it's a way to share each other. And in a sense, they're all getting to know each other better because they're on that podcast. That's really cool. That's a great idea to do, to bring everyone together and connect your whole company a little bit closer together. I never hear this kind of stuff in the news. You always hear about the difficulties, and it's always, at least the way I interpret it, it's always presented being managers as opposed to workers. It's like a conflict between the two sides. The workers want to work from home, obviously. You're hearing that a lot. And then the managers want everybody back in the office. But you have a different take, at least it seems like it. You're trying to bring everyone together and have a closer connection, closer group. I'm very impressed with that. That's really different to hear. It's a breath of fresh air. It's like you have a different approach to the entire argument.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And it's really just an extension of our culture here at West Bend. In a few months, we have what we call our Big Silver Lining Summit, where we bring everybody from all over the country. We bring all of our folks in to our home office in West Bend. And again, we spend a better part of a week together, just doing some training, doing some team building. But it's the virtual piece is just the reality of the workplace today, right?
Sure.
But there's still something to be said for that face-to-face interaction, that camaraderie that you get from being together. And we try to embrace both of those things. And so I'm really excited for our summit coming up in September. I think it's going to be great.
That's really cool. Okay, tell me more about, because I know about workman's comp, but for the layman out there that doesn't understand all the details, tell me about workman's comp.
Sure, absolutely. We insure businesses that, again, everybody needs workers' comp insurance. So we insure businesses and we work with those accounts closely to help make sure that their safety protocols are up to date, that they're doing all the right things to, first and foremost, prevent injuries, right? But in the unfortunate event that something happens and a person is hurt at work, they report a claim to us and we handle it as such, right? We help confirm that the injury is in fact work-related, and then we help distribute any benefits that might be owed, make sure that their medical care is taken care of. with our goal to try and get them back to their pre-injury status, right? So helping people try and get back to work, and while they're going through that process, doing what we can again to make sure their medical is taken care of,
Sure.
and certain circumstances that their lost wages are taken care of, and help them walk through that process. Claims is tough. Claims is a tough business, whether it's workers' comp or property or anything else. You're having that interaction because something bad happened.
Right.
So that initial interaction already, there's a little bit of a negative connotation to it, maybe because
Gives you a point.
again, the reason you're talking to that person is something bad happened. Somebody lost
you're
something,
right.
and that's insurance. To take me back a little bit, that's actually something I'm really grateful for working with the sheriff's office, right? That some of the skills I learned there with empathy and communication and whatnot, because
Wow.
why am I having that interaction with somebody when I'm working in the jail? It's because something bad happened, right? And so it was an invaluable experience that really gave me a lot of skill sets that I could carry over into claims.
Wow, that's interesting. Your outlook on all that's really different, I would say, because a lot of people, I guess society looks upon people that end up in jail as these are bad people. They've done something bad to be in there, but yours is something has happened to them and now they're in there. They're in a bad position in their life. It's not necessarily that they're bad people per se. It's just unfortunate events have happened to them. And the same thing, really, I agree with you. I didn't really put those two together, but you're absolutely right. Whenever you're talking about insurance, something bad has happened to these people, whatever that is, whether it's a workplace injury or a fire on their house or a car accident, whatever it is, there's obviously something bad that's happened. Hence, they need to file a claim. And so the correlation there, even though I think as society, we treat those people totally differently. The ones that had a workplace injury, it's through no fault of your own, you were injured at work. And so we're here to take care of you. Whereas the jailing is, at least where I envision that, is that these are bad people. And your outlook is very much more treat them all the same, that they're there through an unfortunate series of events. And we're here to try and work through that. And you need to have compassion for these people. So that's very respectable. I'm impressed with that.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I grew up, my dad was a police officer. It was just talking with him too before I got into law enforcement, but it's just that don't get me wrong, there's some bad people out there that do some bad things, and that's why they're in jail. There's also some good people who made some bad choices, right? And that's also why they're in jail. And again, you said it, Caleb, they're people. Regardless, they're people. And wrong or indifferent, you treat them with respect, you treat them as such, and you get a lot further when you do so.
I'm very impressed with that. Yeah, that's really interesting. Tell me more, I guess, details, because I know we have to have a workman's comp insurance for our company as well. And I got to be honest, I see one company is very similar to another company. Tell me about what are the differences with hiring a company like with West Bend Mutual as opposed to, let's say, Aflac. That's just a name that's just top of my mind. But there's literally hundreds of other companies out there in the marketplace. It's like you said as well. You're mandated by state law to have this.
Right.
So you end up doing that. I typically, to be honest, I would go with one that's going to be the most convenient for our company. Okay, who can integrate in with our payroll company and who can make everything easy as possible on us and do it pay as you go and things like that. Can you tell me more details about anything like that?
Absolutely. Again, our team in particular that I'm the director of, we take a team approach, right? Okay. So we handle mid to large size accounts. And when I say a team approach, we have a dedicated adjuster to that, or a dedicated few adjusters to that particular account. So when somebody reports a claim, they're dealing with the same people, right?
Okay.
Our adjusters get to know their accounts. They get to know, someone says they were hurt on a certain machine. We have an idea of what they're talking about, right? As they're reporting the claim, they know how to reach us, right? They know that we know their return to work policies, that we know their safety protocols. So it's having that relationship that just makes processing of that claim so much easier, right?
Sure.
I'm thinking if I'm a business and I report a claim, I don't want to have to talk to a different person every single time when I'm reporting a claim or trying to get an update on a claim. So that's why we take a team approach again. So it's building that relationship. Insurance is, again, it's a relationship business. And so
Yeah.
the more we know our accounts, the more we can help them prevent injuries. And in the unfortunate case where somebody does have an injury, again, we have a better idea of the workplace. Again, their safety programs, return to work programs. So it just makes it that much easier for us to understand what's going on and help those folks who are injured at work get better and hopefully be able to get back to work as the ultimate goal. We also work closely with our underwriting staff and our loss control staff to make sure that they're aware of what's going on with certain accounts and that we can pull from their expertise. If we notice trends or something like that, we're like, man, this account really has a lot of injuries from like slips and falls was a great example. Get our safety folks involved so they can meet with the account and say, where are you having these slips and falls? Is it a footwear issue? Is it an issue with your plowing company or something like that in the winter where they're not getting out there timely? Do you have a certain type of floor that, maybe is causing folks to slip and fall, whatever it may be, right? But it's having that internal communication to make sure everybody's on the same page with how can we better this account. And then externally, it's working with not only our accounts, but our agency partners to help make the businesses safer, more profitable, and again, have better education of how the experience should go.
Wow, I'm very impressed with all that. So it sounds like so much more than I understood. You guys are given a very personalized experience, and that's not what I expected. I'm very impressed with that. I was going to tell you about this as well, mentioning slips and falls and different things like that. I'm hoping to have this gentleman on here within the next week or two. He designed a new device, and it's a safety harness, basically. So whenever you have falls, you have this safety harness, and these are required. I believe it's like anything over 6 feet or 4 feet, depending on the industry. You have a safety harness. And his device, what it does is as soon as that is pulled, then it basically activates. And so as soon as they go into a fall status, this device activates and it sends out text messages. It'll send out all these alerts, everything like that to all these different people to letting them know, hey, you've got an employee over here or whoever it is that needs to be alerted that's now fallen. And his point was, because he worked in some of these industries, was that there's a lot of people, and I didn't know this. I've worn those safety harnesses in the past, and they're very uncomfortable. I don't think I've ever been through that, but that is the very uncomfortable experience to go through. You're just like, no, I do not want to sit in that thing for 30 seconds and hang there. But he said a lot of people end up losing limbs because of that. They will lose limbs. It happens all the time. He said because they sit in these things too long, and it can happen. You sit within a matter of minutes, like 10 minutes or so, because it cuts off your circulation to your legs. So he had this device, and I'm like, why didn't I think of this? Sure, there's a lot of other people like that because it's not necessarily terribly complicated. It's relatively simple, but it just alerts people that, hey, I've got an employee here, especially on like a remote location. If you've got hundreds of people working around, you don't need a text message telling you've got one guy hanging on the roof. They're all around here. But there's a lot of places like, say, the oil and gas or wind energy and dozens of different sites like that where they may not know that someone at this location is now hanging because they've had a fall. And so this device will alert them that saying, hey, you've got this person over here and they're now hanging. This kind of goes into with what you were talking about earlier with what do we need to do to help improve or lower your workman's comp payouts? Because if this continues to happen, of course, that's bad for the company as well, right? They have to pay higher premiums. So you all have an interest in working together to help try to lower the premiums for the company and obviously lower the amount of claims that are being filed for your company as well.
Absolutely. We always say the best claim is the one that never happened or the one that was prevented.
Yeah.
And we have an incredible loss control staff with our company. And again, to do just that, we actually have an ergonomist on staff as well. So again, it's not just a lot of times we think of the traumatic injuries, right? Fall, cut, whatever it might be. But it's not just that. It's are you working with things at a proper height, right? So you're not straining your shoulders constantly or your back or whatever it might be.
All right.
Again, it's helping these accounts make their workplaces that much safer. And again, helping them make sure they have not only the education, but the ownership of things like safety programs and things like that.
Wow. This is actually where the rubber meets the road, because this kind of stuff actually makes sense for you guys. It makes direct sense, financial sense, because you're having to pay out. You may not have to pay out every single person, but they've got 10,000 employees or more. There's going to be payouts that you're going to be having to see. So you have to think about safety of all these different employees. And what you're mentioning there, that's really interesting to me as well. It's like you've got people that are working and you may not have an injury. It may not be like a major accident, but over time, they may have injuries, be it like pulling muscles or back problems, because they're just continuously doing that same motion, or it's some kind of a motion where they're lifting overhead and that ends up hurting them over time. So that would be a workman's comp claim. Is that correct?
Potentially, sure. So
Wow.
and again, there's different statutes, different laws in different jurisdictions to help
Sure.
determine that. But again, like you said, working in certain positions over time, the force of a certain job or role or whatever it might be, job rotation to make sure, again, you're not doing the same thing all the time to help improve body mechanics. And those are all things, like you said, that our safety folks try and take into consideration to help prevent injuries.
That's really interesting. And just because I've been through some of these trainings, and most of the time they're really boring and monotonous, and you're just like, oh, we got to go through this crap again. I understand that. From your perspective, is this makes a lot of sense, and you will see injuries. Whenever you're talking about a large enough population of people, you're going to see injuries, and so you guys are trying to do your best. That's why you have these things, to minimize those injuries as much as you can. I've just seen both sides of it. I've seen the safety side of it where you're like, we got to go through the safety training. Are you kidding me? And you think you know your job. You think you know how to do your job and you're going to be fine with it. You've done it hundreds of other times. There's not going to be any problems. You guys see the accidents. You guys are out there seeing, oh yeah, we saw this guy fall off this stand or this height. And so we want people, whenever they're over 6 feet in the air, to be wearing a safety harness. That's all these really things that it almost seems like torturous. Whenever you're working, you're like, I got to put this thing on. You're kidding me. But it's there to protect you. It's there for a reason. So that's really interesting to see your side of the other side of everything as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I get it. Having to wear like a hard hat every day or ear protection all day and stuff. It's not always the most comfortable. But like you said, it's if you you have to keep in the forefront of your mind that, like you said, we see the bad result or the poor result of accidents or safety, maybe being skipped or not taken far enough or whatever it might be, and what the end result could be. I'm sure my kids probably hate walking around with me and we go somewhere and I'm like, oh, that doesn't look so safe. And I'm like, just let it go for a minute. But
I'm sure. Yeah. So
can't
you're
help
the
myself.
safety guy. That's funny. Do you see a lot of injuries where the employee was not following the proper safety procedures? Like you said, hard hats, earplugs, dozens of different things like that. Because I know a lot of times, from my experience, nobody's wearing that stuff. We always did it around the boss just until we got 50 feet away. And then all that stuff came off. That's just the
Sure.
way things happen.
No, I totally get that. And sure, sometimes you do see that, right? Where somebody skipped a
Right.
step or avoided using the proper BE or whatever it might be. But shout out, I guess, to our underwriting team where we are very careful and very methodical in the accounts that we work with, because we want that relationship, like I mentioned before, and we want to work with folks who are trying to keep their folks safe. Because again, like you said, it benefits them, it benefits us.
Really beneficial.
The less losses they have, the better for everybody. We're careful and methodical in how we choose who we work with and who we insure. So thankfully, yes, we do see people who are injured because they avoided certain safety protocols. But on the other side of the coin, sometimes again, it's just dumb luck. Unfortunate incident happened where somebody was following all the right procedures or whatever else, and something beyond their control happened.
Right.
to cause their injuries. We see both sides of it, and both sides, it's unfortunate, but that's why we're here, right? So when you do have a loss, that we can try and help that person get better, take care of
Yeah.
themselves, get back to work.
Wow. Yeah, that's really impressive because workman's comp is just kind of one of those things. It's just, this is just one of those mandated things, but there's so much more to it. It's just like all these other things. There's so much more intricacies to it. So you guys really try to, as much as you can, work with a company that you've vetted, you've checked everything out, and that they are following all their procedures because, like you said, it's mutually beneficial. So that way they keep their rates low. And then, of course, you can avoid having to have claims filed. And another big benefit as well is that you're keeping people healthy. It's a side benefit. You've got employees that you probably would never even know how many people would be injured or killed so many years ago. 50, 75 years ago, you used to see 5 deaths whenever they were building a bridge or more. And now it's unheard of. You don't have
Right.
deaths at all. If anything, you might have an injury, but that's even very rare. So we've come a long ways, and you guys are doing good work for people, actually trying to keep the employees healthy as well.
I'm doing the best we can. That's for sure.
Sure. Okay. Where do you see the industry moving towards? Are there any technological changes? Is there any other changes that you see coming up in the near future?
Sure. So it's been interesting watching folks are working longer, right? These days,
I see.
prolonging retirement. Some pros of that, again, you have some highly trained, highly qualified people that are still working in these industries, which is fantastic. And they can help mentor some of the less experienced folks coming in and teach them the proper ways to do things. But on the other side of things, it takes a 65-year-old usually longer to heal up than it does a 25-year-old.
Sure.
That's just common sense. It's been interesting watching the demographics of workers, right, throughout the various industries. But like you mentioned too, it's also interesting watching how technology is coming into play with different safety platforms. We've been specifically in claims. We work with a great vendor called Hi Marley to help with things like text message communications, because that's becoming more and more popular. People not necessarily wanting to talk to a person, but give updates via text message or something like that. So that's something that's been helpful. But it's also a lot of, yeah, you alluded to it before, looking at data analytics and how we can improve all kinds of processes. And it's not just, it's funny, AI is the hot topic right now, and
Sure.
how is that going to impact jobs and things like that. To me, it's almost more, it's taking all those things that AI can do in data and analytics, and it's more of a question of how can we use that information to better ourselves, right? And help our folks get beyond some of having to do some of the mundane tasks, become more efficient, more creative, and be able to, we hire a lot of smart people and give them the freedom to be able to do their job that way. It's trying to find uses for technology to not only help us become more efficient, but at the end of the day, help our customers be more efficient, help our customers become safer, and be able to prevent claims.
Yeah, prevent claims. I like how you finished it up. I really like how you guys, at least seems like you guys are really balancing the use of this technology with like this human touch as well. Like you said, there's always a person. It's always going to be that same, like you have a dedicated person whenever that company needs, hey, we need to file a claim. You're not picking up a 1-800 number and dialing and getting to talk to an operator that has no idea who your company is, or what you do, or anything of the nature. You have a dedicated representative there that knows your company. That's very impressive. It seems like so many things with technology just becomes inhumane. It's great, it makes things quicker and everything like that, but we're taking the human element out of it. So you guys kept that. I really like that you kept that. And then also you're integrating technology where you can, where it makes sense to integrate things like you're saying with AI, different things like that. It does have its place. It can definitely do things. I don't necessarily think it's going to take everything over anytime soon. It's still in its early stages of doing some things, but there's still some areas where it can improve your workflow and different things like that, can make things a little bit quicker and easier. But I'm
Absolutely.
really impressed.
We have a couple of work comp groups here. at West Bend. And that's just it. It's if you're a smaller account, you have maybe one claim a year. Do you need all the bells and whistles? Do you need a dedicated team? Probably not. But if you're a larger account, you have a lot more injuries, you have more robust safety program, whatever it might be, a tons of locations. It's, again, finding the right fit for that employer and what makes sense for them. And then, again, just trying to make the process as easy as possible for them.
Yeah, definitely. Rob, I really had a great time with you. I learned some new things. There's so much more to it all than I understood. And that's my whole point of doing this is just, it's a learning experience. I get to talk to people like yourself that I would never have known so much about workman's comp. I just, like I said, when I first started, it just seems plain and simple, but it's not. There's a lot to it all when you're really trying to get out there and prevent injuries. You guys are doing a really good job, it sounds like, as well.
Yeah, again, we try, and again, it's education piece across the board, right? It's education, like we talked about, for people looking to maybe explore whether or not an insurance career is for them. It's educating them and everything insurance has to offer. It's educating our accounts on the different things they can do to improve their workers' compensation programs and safety programs and things like that. It's educating, again, the folks that maybe had just a general impression of what you thought work comp might be. And I think it's like anything, it's probably a little more behind the scenes than some of us might think. So,
of course. Excellent, Rob. I really had a great time with you, and hopefully I can have you go on again in the near future.
Yeah, I would love that, Caleb. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. You have a good one. Hi, this is Caleb Owens with Premier Insurance Housing. Do you need help with ALE or temporary housing for your policyholders or clients? If so, we would love to help out. We offer a wide range of services, and we offer our services nationwide. We offer mobile homes and fifth wheels to single-family homes and apartments. To request our services, just click the link in the description or give us a call, 405-604-0786.